Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Supergirl Season 6 review series. And today I am going to be talking about episode 13, The Gauntlet, which I have just finished watching. And this episode for me was very 50-50. It wasn't the greatest, but at the same time it wasn't the worst. But having said that, there were some good things that I actually enjoyed about this episode. Now, as we've learned in the last episode, Lena Luthor went back to her roots and she learned that her mother was a witch and there was a strong possibility that she herself could be a witch. And I said in the last review that the idea of Lena Luthor possibly being a witch and possessing powers, don't know really, kind of could go either way because if you were going to give Lena Luthor superpowers or powers of a witch of some sorts, I think they should have done that maybe back in season 5, where they were trying to push Lena Luthor to be like the big bad, the main villain for the show, but they didn't do that. So I said at the end of the last edition of this review series that the possibility of Lena Luthor being a witch and possessing powers of a witch could go either way. It could be the idea that she could be a force for good and work with Supergirl and all of her friends, or the idea of having powers could turn her absolutely mad and make her into a bad guy. We'll just have to see, really. But the idea of Lena Luthor having powers, which was kind of explored in this episode, was interesting. That was probably the only good thing I liked about this episode. Now, in this episode, Nixley is on a mission to possess the totems, and it seemed like Supergirl and Nixley had this psychic connection where, for example, in this episode, Supergirl had flashbacks of the night that she actually made her public appearance and saved the airplane with Alex, which was back in the pilot episode of the show in season 1. And we also saw flashes of the betrayal that Mixie was talking about a couple of episodes back, where we saw Nixley actually murder her own father. So, there was all sorts of things going on here, but this final season of Supergirl seems to have been all over the place. I mean, there's been some good episodes, but at the same time, there's been some clunkers. So I do have to question where exactly is all of this heading, because they seem to be pushing Nixley now more than ever as the main villain. And no disrespect to the character, but she's not really main villain material. Personally, for me, I would have brought Lex Luthor back. As much as I don't care much for Lex Luthor, and I love John Cryer, he's done an amazing job as Lex Luthor. He's probably the second best Lex Luthor. The best Lex Luthor still goes to Michael Rosenbaum by a landslide. But I do understand we are going to see Lex Luthor back, I think, before the show actually wraps up. So fingers crossed for that. We'll see that happen very soon. But Nixley being the main villain doesn't really appeal to me that much. I mean, for a couple of episodes, that's fine. But for the whole season, not so much. But as I said, this episode had its good points, but at the same time, I wouldn't say had really bad points. There's just some bits that I didn't like. But as I said, this episode was near enough decent, but it wouldn't go down as one of the worst. But at the same time, it won't go down as one of the best. As I said, the only thing I probably enjoyed about this episode, as I mentioned already, was the whole stuff with Lena Luthor possibly being a witch. That was the only thing that I enjoyed about this episode. So, with that all said, let's get straight into it. Let's talk about episode 13, The Gauntlet. So, we see Supergirl and Brainy struggle to figure out anything about the totems, and they are interrupted by Lena, who returns to the tower. They let her know about what they're facing with Nixley, and Supergirl and Lena head to the Fortress of Solitude. Now, remember, this is the first time that Lena Luthor has been back in the fortress since she done her big heel turn. So, I did have flashes of that where she trapped Supergirl in kryptonite and just walked off and took off with all the kryptonite weapons. So I had little flashes of that. So they get information about the totems and they see a Kryptonian witch named Vida, who is the information they pull up about. Vita warns them to avoid the totems but gives them the rules. There is an order to use them. They've been concealed as artifacts and they have to be activated before they can be used. And to fully control them, they have to undergo a test of character and also that the totems had an influence on the civilizations that they grew up around. At the National City Museum, a researcher is told that her funding has been cut off and her partner took her plans and thus ruined all of her work. Her colleague encourages her to get the plans back. Mitch walks through casing the new exhibit and then reports back to Nixley about how she's going to get the first totem. At home, Kelly and Alex talk about how Kelly has been processing things and it seems to be going well. Alex gets a text from Kara that she has a lead on the totems and Kelly needs to get to work with Orlando as she promised him Guardian would help with the housing situation. Now, as we all know, Kelly Olsen became Guardian back in the last episode. And yeah, I felt that whole thing was a little bit rushed. I mean, the costume looks absolutely amazing. The whole shield and the gold helmet and, the braided hair. I thought it looked absolutely incredible, but the whole build up to it just felt a little bit rushed. At least with Jimmy Olsen, as I mentioned before, he had a nice little build. You wanted to see him become a hero in his own right after many years of being Superman's pal. So that was a nice payoff to see that. And he even got to fight alongside Supergirl and John Jones. But Kelly Olsen being the next Guardian just kind of felt a bit forced. But, it is what it is. At Catco, Andrea yells at William about his work as it appears to be slipping, especially in tracking the Super Friends, but it seems that William is struggling with PTSD. Interesting. At the tower, we see the Super Friends try to narrow down what the Totem of Courage is, but it's a lot. However, they get lucky with a match to get a slingshot at the museum. Brainy texts Nia about it, and she gives William a tip about where he might find the Super Friends next. At the museum, Nixley goes to steal the totem, but the Super Friend shows up and she activates the totem using the word, but Supergirl hits her with laser vision, breaking the totem in half. At the tower, they try to sort out what's going on, and Vita possesses Brainiac 5. The broken totem is spewing energy, and now anyone who was close to touching it gets a boost of courage. Now, this part here, where everybody gets a boost of courage, sounds good on paper, but some of it came across as a bit silly. Like, for example, Alex suddenly got the courage to do absolutely anything, and she just runs into the face of danger. That was kind of a bit silly. John Jones getting a boost and, him breaking his character because, John Jones is such a serious, quiet man. And he just breaks character and just says, "Oh, well done, girls. I'm so proud of how you've become." So that was kind of funny in some respects. And, David Harewood, I've said before, he's an amazing actor and he kind of saved that scene for me. The only way to stop is to gain full control of half of the totem they have, and it will then attract the other half, but Supergirl has to pass her gauntlet before Nixley passes hers, and if Supergirl fails, it could be disastrous. Lena extracts Vita from Brainy, and Supergirl goes on the run to find the gauntlet. Supergirl activates the gauntlet and has to face the moments where she lacked true courage. This takes her back to the night she first made her public appearance as Supergirl, where she saved the falling plane from crashing, which Alex was boarding, which nearly crashed in National City. Now, this was actually a nice callback. I actually enjoyed this because seeing, Supergirl going public for the first time before she even put her cape on was a real nice treat. And it made me remember that Supergirl was and still can be a great show. However, as she flies away, she hears someone call for help. At the time, she didn't go because she was afraid she would be seen. She goes this time and responds, but it wasn't the right answer. She fails, and everyone who was nearby suddenly gets a sudden surge of courage. Hmm. Nixie also activates her gauntlet and faces her own past. Her brother is praised for trying to start a coup, but Nixie is arrested. This time in the gauntlet, Nixie acts and kills her father, but is also a failure, causing yet another surge. Chaos starts to break out at the museum, and the Super Friends are also now overconfident as well, which does not go down well. Supergirl finally gets John Jones to calm everyone down. At the tower, Supergirl tries to get them to understand how bad this situation is. Nia is also impacted because she's in a deep dream state and can't be awakened. Elsewhere, Nixie doesn't understand why she failed. Mitch suggests that she killed the wrong person, making her realize that killing her brother might have been the real test. Interesting. As for Tower, Lena talks with Kara and Kara tries the gauntlet again, but fails again, causing yet another surge of courage. It prompts the researcher to try her lightning device recklessly, causing real problems. Now, Katie McGrath is an amazing actress, and her little heart to heart with Supergirl was really good. I really enjoyed this. I think, if I'm truly honest, the two people that carried this episode was David Harewood and Katie McGrath. They're just amazing performers, and Katie McGrath never really gets enough credit as an actress. She's really, really versatile, and if you don't know what I mean, check her out in Merlin. She was unbelievable. Lena interrogates Vita, who suggests that Lena needs to accept her powers and harness them, as that might be powerful enough to stop Nixley. A storm starts to threaten the city, and they realize it's a result of the courage spike. Elsewhere, Nixley tries her gauntlet again and faces her brother. She doesn't kill him, but she confronts him, breaking down and telling him how his betrayal destroyed her. It's what lets her pass the gauntlet. Nice. The Supergirl friends lock down the piece of the totem that they have and focus on the storm, but with everyone impacted by the totem, except Lena, dealing with things is a huge challenge. Supergirl shuts down the researcher's machine, but the storm rages on. We then see Supergirl tells Lena to release the totem to stop the storm as she needs her team functional. Nixie gets the totem, everybody's returned to normal, and they can deal with the storm. Sentinel's hand of the soldier can do what is needed to reverse things. Guardian shows up to back Sentinel up, and the Super Friends get to work very quickly. They manage to stop the storm, however, Supergirl suddenly passes out as the totem forms. Supergirl says she could feel Nixie's emotions and she's more determined than ever to get the other totems. She and Nixie may now have a psychic bond. At Catco, William confides in Nia about his PTSD and how he's working through it. He also plans to ask if he can be embedded in the Super Friends. Now, this could be interesting. I think William should be in on the secret now because one, it's the final season, and two, just put the poor guy out of his misery. At home, Kelly tells Alex they are now partners as well as heroes. Lena confides in Kara about her mother being a witch and her own possible magic. Kara chooses to stay connected to Nixie as it might be an advantage. Kara then realizes that Nixie is angry, and meanwhile, Nixie doesn't understand why Kara isn't suffering. Mitch says because Kara failed and pain is a price of power. And that's how this episode ends. Overall, this episode was very 50-50. Some good aspects, but at the same time, there was some aspects that I didn't really care much for. But the scenes with Kara and Lena having heart to hearts and actually working together and actually being back on the same page was probably the best thing about this episode, and that carried it. And as well as David Harewood's performance as John Jones. That was good stuff as well. But the idea of Supergirl and Nixley possibly being psychic connected is interesting. So should be quite amazing to see how they're going to pull this off as we head towards the series finale of the show. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What did you think of episode 13, The Gauntlet? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts on Lena Luthor possibly being a witch? Could this turn out to be a good thing or a bad thing? And also, Nixie and Kara having a psychic bond now. How do you think that's going to play out? And also, what about these totems? What do you think is going to happen with that? And also, what did you all think of everybody getting a boost of courage every time an event from the past is played out differently or try to play out differently? Would you like to see more of that in the show, or do you think once of that is more than enough? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Supergirl Season 6 review series, where I am going to be talking about episode 14, and hopefully that should be a good one. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, thanks for listening.